Well, hello there. Welcome to the Obithorian Alliance. I'm Jacob.
And I'm Luke.
And in today's video, we are reviewing Oppenheimer. Like and subscribe, and if you like the sound of that, stick around.
So, Oppenheimer, it's been between that and Barbie, it's been the movie that everyone's been talking about lately. I saw it in IMAX, you saw it in normal, so we've got very different experiences because of that. So, before we get into giving some scores, what is Oppenheimer about for those that have not seen it yet?
So basically, it's about the Manhattan Project, but even until we get to the Manhattan Project, it's a look at how Oppenheimer became the man in charge and how the mission of creating the bomb and the main goal why the project happened. So it's an insight look, a character study of a character, and a main story of beating a other country to creating a other thing.
So, having not known the whole history of Oppenheimer, so Oppenheimer obviously being named after the character or the person, it was different than what I expected this movie. I guess it was kind of showing an inquest to him and him being questioned about his role in the creating of the atomic bomb and the way he went about things. And through that, it showed flashbacks of how it happened. And for those that don't know, obviously it's about the bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's quite tragic. Hundreds of thousands of Japanese people died. So it's a movie about that and kind of glorifying a man that actually contributed to the death of a lot of people. So it's kind of a mixed feelings, but it's long. It's 3 hours. It's an experience. So who's in it? Firstly, it's got a star-studded cast.
Matt Damon, that was also another true story heir, and Robert Downey Jr. and Emily Blunt, quite a lot.
And we got the main character, Cillian Murphy, who's famous from Peaky Blinders, which I haven't seen, but is a very, very popular show from what I've been told. So massive star-studded cast, probably the best part about it. Let's get into scores. So what do you give the plot out of 10, Jacob?
This gets a 9 for me. The plot does a fantastic job of showing, because there are, from the trailer, you get to see different colours, and how it shows is that black and white is from how life is, very black and white, and then the colour of Oppenheimer's perspective is how he's seen the plot and story. So it does a really good job of that. But unfortunately, even though the plot is very well told, it has stakes, unfortunately, it's not going to be for everyone. Some people will find the plot very boring because there's not a lot of action, and unfortunately, I think that's why it doesn't get a 10.
So I gave the plot an 8, mainly because it is it's true stories. There's lots of historical facts. There's lots of characters, lots and lots of dialogue, like 3 hours of non-stop dialogue. I did find myself having to do a bit of fact-checking and searching afterwards to complete some of the dots. And because of that, it's just an 8. I can't give it a perfect score because I was gripped, but I still felt like it's political. You've got to be a fan politics and history to really love it, so 8. What about the characters / acting?
Well, this gets a 9 also. The characters, I feel like the movie, we went on a journey with these characters, and this movie makes me want to look up and find out more information about Oppenheimer, about all the different characters. I think they did a fantastic job. Obviously, they make it more exciting than what it probably was back then to make it more entertaining, and definitely enjoyed the experience with the characters. And obviously, it doesn't get a 10 because it is a true story. You know, we weren't there, so we don't know if everything was true,
So I gave the characters an 8. Obviously, the acting was superb, but it was a lot of characters and there's a lot of trying to work out where everyone fitted in. So that's not really the fault of the actors, but regardless, I gave it an 8. But in saying that, I think Robert Downey Jr.'s performance in this was exceptional, and really haven't seen him in much since his role as Iron Man, so it was good to see him back on the big screen. So, what about the experience or the entertainment factor of this movie?
For me, this gets a 9. I really enjoyed the experience with the visuals, with how they showed his Oppenheimer's mind of how he saw the world with all the flashing and all the different scenes. Unfortunately, with my cinema experience, the audio was a bit low, so it was hard to see what the actors were saying. But besides that, the experience was great, and I do understand why some people would have preferred more action. I still enjoyed the movie. I do agree it is a dialogue based, but I guess it depends what you prefer with your movies and what appeals more to you with your experience.
So, I gave the experience an 8.5. I kind of had the opposite effect to Jacob. I got to see it in IMAX, which is how it was filmed and meant to be presented. And it did add a lot of cool things with the screaming right in your face and the sound being exceptional, but it was almost too much. I'd never been to an IMAX theater before, so this isn't necessarily a discredit on the movie, but just if this is how it was meant to be experienced, it was a bit weird. It was right in your face and the way he sat, and it's like you almost get a headache being so close to the screen. So if that's how it was meant to be viewed, it's a bit strange, but still, nonetheless, it was a cool experience, and I'm glad I got to experience the way that they wanted it to be. So an 8.5. So what about the presentation?
Also talked about in the experience, I felt like presentation-wise, this got a 9 as well. Really well done presentation with how they showed the timelines with the black and white and the colour, and also Oppenheimer's mind as well. The presentation, I think, was really well done with this film. The experience of the presentation was fantastic, and one of the reasons to watch this movie is the presentation.
So I gave the presentation a 10. That's the only thing I've given a 10 out of this for this movie, because I really liked the way that so it was 3 hours, it fitted a lot in, but there wasn't any dead time or just visual scenes where it's just staring at something and no dialogue. They kind of compressed and fitted a lot in this movie. I like when the bomb was going off, how you're expecting a bang and then it doesn't, and it makes you wait. You're expecting these big sounds and they kind of pause and get you on the edge of your seat. I like the cut scenes, how they might zoom in on a molecule or zoom in on an explosion. They kind of just really nailed it, and that's something that Christopher Nolan does a really good job of, and I think this was probably the best presented film I've ever seen. Like, I think it is a masterpiece in terms of cinematography. So a 10 for me for that. What about the ending?
I gave this a 9. I enjoyed how it ended. We've already knowing how it ended, it was kind of what could they really do differently. I still enjoyed the outcome. It ended in a lovely way. Yeah, it ended in a nice bow, you can say.
I gave the ending a 7.5, mainly because, yes, you know how it ends and what's going to happen, but I felt we had so much time, and 3 hours full of dialogue, lots of things going on, and then at the end, the explanations of, oh, well, this is what happened, and this is where they are now. It was like, it felt like they still had more to tell. So I guess they didn't want the film to be too long, but I left, one, having to do more research, and two, it was, I don't know if they presented that the best. I'm a bit iffy when I see movies at the end give you that, text across the screen. Well, this is what happened. This is where they are now. It's like, sometimes I'd rather them present it or just do it a bit better. I thought it didn't do justice to the rest of the movie. You may as well just chucked on an extra 10 minutes at this point. It's already 3 hours long, and shown us what happened, maybe. So 7.5. What about the originality/uniqueness? So it's hard to be original when it's a true story, but how unique was this of a story and the way they told it?
This gets an 8 for me. Comparing it to other true story that came out this year, Air, I think Air does a better story, but seeing it as a character study, I think it deserved that score. I think they did a really well done story of taking the events, but seeing it from a person's perspective. I think it did a really good job there. and I think they did it well that way, but not everyone's going to find it as unique because we already know the story.
So I gave it an 8. I do think it was a unique way of telling the story from the perspective of Oppenheimer being kind of interviewed or interrogated and him telling the events of his life. And then later on seeing the other characters come in and seeing them defend him or speak poorly of him. I thought it was unique because I didn't know how they were going to tell the story. And I guess that made you feel like, was Oppenheimer a genius? Was he a villain? Was he actually just wrongly prosecuted, or was he actually a hero? You know, yes, he may have killed a lot of people or contributed to it, but did he actually save the lives of lots of others if they didn't beat, you know, Russia or Germany to creating the A-bomb? So it got you kind of torn between parts. So I do think it was quite unique in telling that story. Last scoring, what about the X factor? Like something about it, whether it was a recommendable, was it just the experience? Is there something that gives it, you know, a bit of an X factor opposed to every other movie out there?
With this category, this is the highest score it got with a 9.5, and for me, the acting is what holds up this movie. I think someone's going to get an Oscar for this movie, and that scene when we finally got to see the bomb, though, the acting in that scene with the bomb were two standouts that I really enjoyed of this movie. I could recommend the acting in that scene on its own. I understand why people wouldn't enjoy watching, you know, I know acting isn't everything, you need other things, but for me, the acting holds it up a level because I enjoyed Robert Downey Jr., Matt Damon, all those actors did a fantastic job. I think one of them is going to win something from this movie, and that's why for me it gets 9.5 for the X Factor, because the acting is that good that it deserves something.
So I gave it an 8.5 for X Factor, and for me, I think the X Factor about this movie was the way it was marketed. I think whether it was them kind of people collaborating them with Barbie and comparing the two and them coming out on the same day and being opposites, this movie marketed itself really well and has done well in the box office, where I think without that marketing, it probably wouldn't have. Even though it has such an awesome cast, I just don't think that it's a movie people want to see, but it made itself a movie that people had to see. And I think marketing was mainly its X factor. And I think from a cinematography perspective, people are going to be studying this movie for a long time to come. 3 hours of it, there's lots to study. I think this style that Christopher Nolan has used, I don't know if he's created. I'm not a cinematographer student, but it's, I think, something that people are going to try and replicate. So it definitely has X factor. So 8.5. So what was your total score?
The full score out of 100% is at 89. It doesn't quite crack the 90% that's been free movies so far. Look, amazing film. Really enjoyed the acting. There's so much amazing stuff for it, but for me, what it doesn't quite nail compared to the three others is that there's action that holds people's attention, and unfortunately, those three movies I could highly recommend to other people, but this movie, unfortunately, it's such a great movie, I don't see myself I could recommend to the casual viewer. I think it's going to win an award for something, but it's just that movie that is hard to put into words. I think it's an amazing movie, but it's something that I don't think you would want to, unless you're a true history buff or something, you're not going to appreciate it as much. But yeah, 89%. Definitely deserves that score.
So mine added up to 84%, very similar to Jacob. I think it's hard to recommend it. I think you've got to want to see it. If you need to be convinced to see this movie, you're going to find it a hard slog. It doesn't appeal to everyone, but I think those that like history, or if you're really into cinematography and want to see how a good quality film is made, you're going to take a lot from it.
And acting performance.
Yeah, and the acting is obviously a standout. So I think it's a movie that will be studied for many years to come and talked about, but it's going to be one of those ones, you love it or hate it. And I think that unless you already think you're going to love it, it's probably not worth watching, which is hard. And if I compare it to
Mission Impossible, that went for 3 hours.
yeah, something like that, or even I think of the like Barbie. I mentioned several times it came out at the same time. That movie, in comparison, is not as high a quality, but it is rememberable, it's rewatchable, it's recommendable, where this movie just isn't. So I think it's sadly, it's a niche film. It's almost in that category of an artsy film, but with the most ridiculous cast you could imagine. But it is very much an artsy film in that way.
Well, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe. And as always, you're awesome and keep being awesome. And check out the videos at the end. And bye-bye.